Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to today's CLO webinar. My name is Alec, and as usual, I'm here today to help answer any of your general or technical questions that may come up. But before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple of things you'll need to know about the session today. There's no dial-in number for attendees, so all audio will be streamed to you through your computer speakers or headphones. Please be sure to adjust your volume there accordingly. You can submit questions, and we encourage you to submit questions at any point during today's presentation by clicking on the Q&A icon, which should be located on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see a picture of what that icon looks like here on this slide. Click that, type your question in, and click submit. If it's content related, we will have a little bit of time for Q&A, and we may pull your question during that session. And if it's a technical question, I will have an answer for you that should appear on your screen shortly after you submit. Feel free to jump in there right now and let us know where you're joining from. We already have some people in there right now, so some folks from Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So welcome everybody, and feel free to jump in there and let us know where you're joining from. Today's webinar is being recorded. Actually, before I do that, you can download a PDF right now by clicking on the handouts icon. That's a PDF of the slide deck. Just click that handouts icon and you should be able to pull that down and take notes if you'd like. Today's webinar is being recorded. You're going to receive a link to that recording and a quick follow-up email, which will come about 24 hours after the conclusion of today's event. That will come from HCM Events, and just be sure to check spam. So in that same email, you'll have a link to the recording, a link to download a PDF of the slides, and your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's event. All right, so I'm excited about today's event. We have a few great guests with us. The main one you're gonna hear from today, you should see her right there on your screen, is Diana Montero. She's a consultant with StratX. Diana designs and facilitates learning development programs, including women's leadership initiatives for corporations worldwide. With 12 years of experience leading international projects, Diana has designed and delivered effective strategies for startups, not-for-profits, the public sector, academia, and Fortune 500 companies. So joining Diana is a couple of her colleagues there at StratX, in Philippe Latapi and Sebastian Lemio. So they're going to jump on during the Q&A, and they might pop in here and there with some insights. So with all those introductions out of the way, I'm going to pass things over to you, Diana.
Thanks, Alec. Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be presenting this webinar. Thank you for joining me. It is 8 in the evening here in the beautiful city of Paris. Today, my colleagues Philippe and Sebastian are joining us from Boston. They will probably jump in a few times during the questions and polls. Alexandra Harris is also here with me, for both based in Paris. So as you can see, women took control of the business in Paris, and we sent the guys to Boston. It's just a coincidence, I'm not serious. Well, as Alex told you, this is going to be an interactive session. We encourage you to ask questions as we go along. We'll answer them towards the end of the session, and we will ask you questions as well. So please be ready. One more time, welcome to this webinar, and let's get started. As promised, today we're going to cover a few questions about women in leadership. We will tell you about why organizations should develop female talent, what's preventing women from developing, becoming more influential leaders and reaching executive level. Then I will offer an overview of what we consider the path for female leadership development. And finally, we will share a case study showing concrete results and some key learning points from this ongoing leadership program that I have the honor to be co-running. During this webinar, sometimes you might notice that I talk to women facing challenges, looking for responses, and some other times for people in charge of talent development or simply making decisions in the company. First part, why should we develop female talent? If we don't change anything now, in a decade, perhaps a few years more, almost all of you, women, will be working for the guy you're sitting next to. I don't want to scare you or disappoint you, but I'm not the only one saying this. Slightly more successful woman working for a company called Facebook said it before. Today you are equals, tomorrow he will manage to you, make decisions about your next job opportunity, employ you. How this makes you feel? To be fair, this was said 8 years ago during a speech Sheryl Sandberg gave at Harvard Business School. However, can we say it's not true anymore? In recent years, organizations are emphasizing not just the importance, but the necessity to achieve gender parity in leadership and executive roles. And this is not just about numbers or the 50-50 balanced executive board, just to look good, but because a recent study done by McKinsey concluded that organizations with women holding at least 30% of leadership roles are 40% more likely to have sustained profitable growth. And if we think about it, we will literally get the best of both worlds. Different leadership styles, skills, a new culture of learning how to perform as a team, having 50% female members in the room. You consider for promotions not just confident, charismatic individuals, but also more inclusive leaders. And it has been demonstrated that diverse teams perform better. Even when there is evidence on different styles between women and men when negotiating, asking for what they want, different motivations, and so on, I don't think it would be fair to generalize, put labels, and say women are this and men are that. But having 50-50 male and female leaders making decisions, it will be challenging, yes, but also a great opportunity to learn from each other. My point here is, when we talk about balance, it's not just about women and men as individuals, but also the benefits that you get from this balance. To sum up, so far I mentioned 2 reasons to develop female talent. The first one, sustained profitable growth. The second one, a more inclusive work environment that pushes leaders to develop themselves constantly. And a third and a crucial factor, we need to develop female talent to make sure they will be ready in every possible way to undertake leadership positions. For the last 5 years or so, I've been hearing people talking about that research that says women don't apply for roles unless they have 100% of the skills required. And men, they only need 60% to feel confident enough. To be honest, I thought it was true, but I was disappointed. I spent a lot of time reflecting on this, and I was very unsatisfied with the answer and the conclusion that it was just about being confident. Until recently, I read another article that made much more sense and completed the idea. It was also published by HBR, and the title was Becoming Manager Increases Men's Job Satisfaction, but Not Women's. Really? Do you agree? I was shocked, but I continue reading. The article goes, a number of female managers report that managerial promotions do not make them more satisfied with their jobs. Instead, they describe a host of difficulties that women encounter once promoted to management, such as having their legitimacy contested, their contributions undervalued, and being excluded from powerful networks. I guess that makes sense. This is why women might need to prepare much more than a male candidate to apply and assume a leadership role. If we want them to be successful, we need to support them. Perhaps this won't be necessary once we achieve a solid gender parity, but in the meantime, we must accelerate female talent development. Okay, I think it's good to share all these numbers and results, and I'm going to continue doing it in the second part, but first, I would like to know what you think. So it's time now for our first interactive poll. Alec? So the question is, what is the main obstacle holding women back from becoming leaders? So the options you have are lack of support from organizations, gender bias, male-dominated leadership, inflexible working hours for families, and other. If you select other, please submit your comments using the Q&A. I'm going to give you a few seconds before we see the results.
So Diana here, it's going to be interesting to see which obstacle is the most prevalent here that people think. We'll see that in a few seconds?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, here we have the numbers.
Yeah, the main one is male-dominated leadership with 46%. And then we have lack of support from organizations, then gender bias, and then other. Do you see any comment on others?
Not that I could see, no. So male-dominated leadership is clearly a big problem here.
Okay, well, I think we're ready for the second part. So what's preventing women from becoming more influential leaders? First, where are we? What's the situation? Women are earning more bachelor's degrees than men. Some of them are asking for more promotions and negotiating salaries at the same rate as men. They are also getting involved in more impactful projects and making more decisions than a few years ago. But then again, women encounter too many challenges to get to the leadership positions, including the lack of support and role models, unconscious bias, gender pay gaps, and those that you mentioned during the poll. We could extend this discussion for hours, days, and weeks, but today I will summarize two main issues: the lack of support and gender bias. The lack of support. The numbers and results that I'm about to share come from a study called Women in the Workplace. It was done by leanin.org and McKinsey. In 2018, 279 companies employing more than 30 million people completed a survey on their HR practices. In addition, more than 64,000 employees were surveyed on their workplace experiences. Now that you have this background, according to the Women in the Workplace report, commitment to gender diversity didn't progress in the past year. In 2017, 90% of companies said that they prioritized gender diversity, while just 84% said that in 2018. This was also perceived by employees. The percentage of people saying the organization was doing what it takes to improve gender diversity has dropped from 56% to 45%. Many companies are saying they are committed to gender parity, and when you see the numbers, it looks like they are not treating diversity as the business imperative it is. Only 39% of women and 47% of men think that gender diversity is a high priority for their manager, and probably many of them don't even have a real discussion. I'm going to continue giving you numbers because this is how I help you to make your case. Don't worry about the slides, you can download it. 70% of companies are making a strong business case for gender diversity. That's pretty high. But then only 13% have taken the critical next step of calculating the positive impact on the business. There is a gap between what the organizations are saying and what they're actually doing. Some of them have clear objectives with dates, and we, as a strategist, have the privilege of being partnered with one of them. We will talk more about this later with the case study. But I remember a great speaker for that company. So she made a good point when someone asked about all the minorities that should be addressed. She said, all of them are important, but gender diversity is not treated as an initiative to benefit minorities because it's not a minority. It's half of the population. So it's true that great strides have been made in recent years to achieve gender parity in the workplace, but it's not enough and it's progressing very slowly. Today, men are holding 62% of management positions and women only 38%. For every 100 men promoted to manager, only 79 women are promoted. This is not going to help to reach equality. If companies hire and promote women at current rates, the number of women in management will increase by 1 percentage point over the next 10 years. But if the same companies start hiring and promoting women and men at the same rates, 1 man promoted, 1 woman promoted, we could get very close to parity in management over the same 10 years, 52 to 48. And we're seeing companies saying that they will achieve the same in 5 years or less. Now, I want to introduce another factor. Have you heard about the only experience? So this is when finally one of us get the executive level position and then realize that there's no other women in the executive board. I mean, of course you knew, but it's different when you have the actual experience. And in some way, I know how this feels like because 10 years ago, I felt ready to start my own company. I was very ambitious, so I did it. I didn't realize at the beginning, but a couple of years after, we were 6 people at the table making decisions, and I was the only woman. And many times I had a dilemma. Should I behave more like them to be part of that conversation, but it's not exactly about business? Or should I use my time the way I think is more productive? Was that part of the essential networking that we are supposed to do? And then, should I keep trying to employ more women to achieve gender parity here, bringing the topic and having a plan, even when they already said that it's normal to have more men in a male-dominated industry? We did bring over more women, but it was the same story. They were not making the crucial decisions. And I'm just telling you about the superficial decisions, but in terms of business and management, it was very intense. I even tried managing like a man, whatever that means, and it didn't work. I was faking, and my team didn't like it, so it didn't last for long. I realized that I add much more value and balance, bringing my own skills, ideas, network, and leadership style. In any case, around 40% of senior level women are the only woman in the room. When this happens, that person becomes more vulnerable. She will be more likely to deal with microaggressions, feel pressure to perform, and almost twice as likely to have been sexually harassed during the course of her career. On the other hand, women are expected to behave in a certain way to fit in a male-dominated environment. They feel afraid to promote other women because they want to be part of a club and not be excluded from highly influential networks. But they also feel the pressure to perform because they are the only women representing all women in the company. And of course, they don't want to ruin someone else's opportunity to become an influential leader. On top of this, we also have gender bias. And I would like to start with a vital part of the process to get to the top, the performance review. And this is what we have. Managers use more positive words to describe men in performance review and more negative ones to describe women. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the words they use to describe men, most of them are positive and only 2 are negative, arrogant and irresponsible. If you see the words they use to describe women, most of them are negative and a few, only 4, are positive. And if you read them, energetic, organized, these are not the words that you would use to describe a member of the executive board. But this is not just about getting negative feedback. Who do you think will get the promotion? An arrogant employee with a potential negative impact on his work environment, but who can still accomplish a task, or an inept, enthusiastic person? Then we have the paradoxes that women executives often face. We are supposed to be demanding yet caring. After all, we're supposed to be team players. Show authority, but be participative. Otherwise, you might come across as too bossy or aggressive. You must advocate for yourself, but don't forget to serve others. And finally, maintain distance, yet be approachable. Have you noticed this? It's exhausting. I mean, I'm not totally against balance, it's a good thing, but people don't expect the same from men. I want to give you an example. During a salary negotiation, if 2 candidates, a woman and a man, let's call them Carlos and Sandra, they do exactly the same, push to get a little bit more, Carlos will be described as confident, a good negotiator who knows what he deserves, and will bring good business for the company. And Sandra will be described as selfish, aggressive, again, and not very nice, and women are supposed to be nice. I'm very into negotiation because I think it's, about getting a great deal, that means good business for the company, but also maintaining a good relationship. So I've been reading a couple of books, and one of them is called Ask for It by Linda Babcock. And she really encouraged women to ask for more and all the time. And then at the end of the book, don't worry, it's not a novel, I'm not gonna ruin the story for you, but the book summarizes. Ask for what you want, but because gender bias exists and we are not in a culture of gender parity just yet, do it in a nice way. Perhaps in the future we won't need to think about this, but today is one of the key elements holding women back from leadership roles. Now, I have a question for you. It's not a poll, but it's just a question. I would like to know how many men we have today listening to this webinar. Could you please use the Q&A to tell me? Just say something, me, or just to have an idea. I'm going to give you a few seconds. This is very important, and I'm very curious. I'm going to see. Do we have any responses? I'm just going to think that the Q&A, you're saving this part for other questions and not for submitting answers. But the thing is that I really wish we had more participation because men are part of this discussion. And now I want to use the next poll to ask you a question about this. So Alec, could you please send the next poll? So what's the most effective way that men can help achieve gender parity? And then the options are actively mentor high potential women, increase awareness of existing barriers, challenge biases of leader characteristics, and for other. Again, if you click other, please let us know your comments on the Q&A. I'm going to give you a few seconds before we get the results. It would be great if we have some men actually also submitting their answers. Okay, so we got the responses. I think that the most dominant here, like with 44%, we have challenge biases of leader characteristics. Yeah, the other two are kind of similar, actively mentor high potential women and increase awareness of existing barriers. Well, I'm gonna invite some men here. So Philippe and Sebastian, would you like to say something about this?
Yes, so this is Philippe in Stratex Boston. I would say, yeah, the challenge biases of leader characteristics, that's something that we definitely see a lot in research. So pretty consistent with your feedback here and the bigger picture. And one, I think on actively mentor high potential women, there's a caveat to that. I had some good insights from a great TED talk on this topic about the fact that when, by definition, because of the numbers, women tend to be more often mentored by men than by women. And when men are the ones mentoring, they are not conscious of it, but they tend to mentor men differently than they do women. And so there's, like when they mentor women, it's more focused on being assertive, communication presence, these kinds of aspects. And when they mentor men, they go more into strategy, the numbers for the business, these types of aspects. So I would say if you leverage the mentors, make sure maybe that you coach your male mentors when they are male mentors about this type of unconscious bias. And also I would say, what's missing here, we didn't put in the questions, but also actively sponsor high potential women, I think would be a good one, where you're really advocating on behalf of women. They might not be in the room, but when there are new opportunities, make sure you bring up their names could be a good one too.
And I'll just add real quick that someone mentioned self-awareness of the bias too, and in a response that we didn't add under others. So that's a good one. A couple of people mentioned all of the above. And Diana, we do have men on the webcast. So I think I saw at least 3, including someone in Philly. So there are some.
Thank you, Philippe and Sebastian. That was useful, and I'm happy to know that we have some men here. It's true that mentoring is a very special and very important point. We're going to talk about that now in this next part. We're ready to do the path for female leadership development. And I will split this part into tips for women and then recommendations for decision makers. For women, I know that we're talking about individuals, therefore the needs, situation, and ambitions might be different for each of you. But I will mention 6 recommendations that might help you to achieve what you want. So the first one is get gender parity at home first. If you get your dream job, the promotion, that business trip to pitch the most important project in your career, and you don't have the support at home, how can you make it? Organizations are not the only ones responsible for gender equality. You need to get the support at home. Perhaps it's your partner, your mom, someone you hire to help you. But even if you think that is expensive, think how expensive could be not to get the job, the promotion, the career you want. Even emotionally, the cost is too high. Number 2, start young. Our current culture doesn't necessarily encourage young leaders to take the lead and have high ambitions. If you're lucky to have the conditions to emerge as a leader, share this with younger women and create the opportunities. Internships, summer programs, create a meeting and let someone from your team to present on your behalf. We need to support each other. Number 3, stay competent and confident. You need both. You need to overcome the famous imposter syndrome that we normally have. And if this resonates with you, I have a couple of books that I can recommend. But if you feel that you are not ready, just read a book, ask for help, find a mentor, practice more, whatever you need. But once you got the opportunity, that's your moment and you are ready. So please don't sabotage yourself. And I want to give you a concrete example of the kind of not so traditional help that you could get. So during the design phase of this women's leadership program that we are running at the moment, we surveyed the participants on their expectations and needs, and the responses suggested that they wanted to improve their communication skills, public speaking, persuading stakeholders, even self-promotion and negotiation. So this is why, following the approach experience, learn, apply, we brought these communication workshops with professional actors to practice these skills and receive feedback from other participants. I know that sounds kind of different, but it really had an impact. We created a safe space where they were able to interact and practice the kind of behavior they would like to have in those situations. Number 4, go networking. I don't think I need to explain this one. It's a big topic. But what I want you to remember is that we need to be strategic. Have your elevator pitch ready to go. Privilege quality over quantity and follow up after every meaningful encounter. And be patient. I know that this takes time and you might not have results right away, but it's essential. The difference between effective leaders and successful leaders is that the first one, they work very close to their teams, with them and spend most of the time with them just to make sure that they achieve the expected results. And then when you see successful leaders, they normally network with external members, with more senior potential stakeholders, just to expand the impact and capitalize. Number 5, include mentors and sponsors. This will help you get access to more senior leaders, information, expertise, perhaps promotions. Should you get one? Of course. but I wouldn't advise to start chasing a sponsor without a clear idea of what you want to achieve. And I'm saying this because finding a sponsor is becoming the equivalent to waiting for the Prince Charming, but in professional life. Like just, wait there because they're going to come and save your career. It's great to be proactive, but in some cases, they will appear when you demonstrate that you don't need one to survive. If you show potential, you will attract them. Finally, find support from an organizational level. And I will use this one as a link to our recommendations for decision makers. So based on 4 years of data and insights, there are 6 actions that companies should take to make progress on gender diversity. The first one, set targets, use reporting and accountability. Otherwise, it will be just a nice to have rather than a must have, a real commitment with a plan. Number 2, ensure that hiring and promotions are fair and more transparent. We want to promote more women, but for the right reasons. And research shows that there is potential. There are women leaders ready to take these positions, but they need support, more visibility, and the right work environment. Number 3, make senior leaders and managers champions of diversity, especially if a company follows a top-down approach. We need to engage stakeholders, executive sponsors, managers, the gender balance board. This is one of the key elements to successful development initiatives. Number 4, foster an inclusive and respectful culture. Number 5, make the only experience rare. Don't allow too many rooms with just one woman in it. Number 6, offer employees the flexibility to fit work into their lives. Focus on results instead of working hours. If a working mom needs to leave the office earlier and then go back to check her email after she puts her children in bed, I don't think this won't hurt your organization, but can make a great impact for that person that is taking more responsibilities on that job that she's passionate about and probably the best person to do it. Corporations have a critical role in developing female talent. They need to promote more women into leadership positions, and female development initiatives are an imperative to have successful change. How to get buy-in from the top? With results, with good analysis, with a plan and outcomes that shows how the entire organization can benefit from having more women in the business. You can encourage your teams to create these reports, monitor the changes and impact. After reviewing all this research, many books, articles reflecting, designing and delivering leadership programs for managers and executives, I asked myself, do I really think this is possible? Can we create the conditions to develop and promote female talent and achieve gender parity? I'm very pleased to say today that we have a case study to present, so the answer is yes, it is possible. I will summarize this Women's Leadership Initiative in a moment, but first we have another interactive poll. So the question is, Alec, what do you think is stopping your organization from accelerating female talent? And the options are the company's culture, the lack of women asking for what they want, the deficiency of awareness on issues women normally face, leaders at the top of the organization, or other. Again, Q&A available for your comments. I'm going to give you a few seconds before we see the results. Okay, we have the results here. So it looks like the majority think that the deficiency of awareness on issues women normally face. I think I want to comment on this one because I think it's true. We need to talk more about this. And that's why the main part of this presentation is about showing the results and how they feel. because it's important to know to be able to face all these challenges and help them. So I don't know if Philippe or Sebastian want to say anything on this?
Yes, the one on deficiency of awareness is definitely someone that was validated recently again by a large study by the Boston Consulting Group, BCG, where clearly there was a gap between, they were looking at white men over 45 and different diverse groups, including women. And there was about a 30% perception gap between women and these 45-plus-year-old men about how, some of the challenges that were affecting women in the workplace. So definitely lack of awareness is still a big deal.
And I can add that someone said all of them again, so that's probably true for most of the poll. And somebody else added lack of female talent in our field of work and mentioned that they've been actively hiring more women into the organization, but that without more women going into the field, it's hard to achieve that gender diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that one of the most difficult to face is when it's the company's culture. So we were very lucky, and I'm gonna use this as a link for the case study that we are partnering with this company. They really want to change this, and they have a specific goals. So I'm gonna start with the part 4 now with the case study, Leadership Development Initiative. So this is an ongoing initiative that we co-created and co-delivered with a top 10 pharma company. It is a global women's leadership development program offered to a select group of high potential women expected to assume senior leadership roles in the coming years. So different business units and regions nominate participants. We get a very diverse cohort coming from more than 20 countries, speaking different languages with different backgrounds and experience. And the program was designed with 6 objectives in mind. 1, help achieve gender parity in the organization in senior leadership positions and executive role by the middle of the next decade. Number 2, drive momentum for inclusion and diversity. Number 3, create the next generation of leaders ready for the challenges of the future. So this company wants to make sure that they prepare the internal talent to take these spaces that are going to be available once the present generation goes into retirement. Number 4, reinforce a global vision and understanding of the company. Number 5, create a strong network of senior women leaders around the world that can help and mentor each other. And finally, empower each participant to follow her own path. To achieve this, Extradex conducted a series of interviews with its stakeholders and senior members in the organization to identify learning priorities. We also surveyed the participants to understand their needs, and they came up with this learning focus: self-awareness and authenticity. We need to start by knowing ourselves, developing us as individuals to be able to lead the team and lead the business. The next one is courage and resilience. Organizations are understanding that efficient people are great, that courageous and resilient professionals go beyond, can innovate, drive change, and overcome difficult situations. Like they are not going to try to escape to another company when things become more challenging. Then exerting influence and presence to persuade others. Cross-functional and cultural collaboration, which is essential in a global organization. Agility and change leadership, that is fundamental in a very volatile business world. And they also include this last one that is not just about reaching, reacting, but also being proactively leading strategic change. Now, how the participants acquire the skills. What's the structure of this program? It is a 9-month experiential blended learning journey that includes 2 on-site modules and a remote phase. Everything here has a purpose and has been intentionally included to achieve the objective that I just mentioned. We start with a virtual kickoff where we welcome the participants and their managers in separate sessions, and we explain the key elements of this program, the expectations in terms of time commitment and deliverables. Afterwards, we have a few touch points, such as the project kickoff, where we create teams, and then the participants need to source business projects to develop during this program and find an executive sponsor. In addition, each person completes personality and behavior 360 assessments, and then after a debrief session, they start working with an executive coach. Then we have the first residential module that includes challenging communication workshops with one of our business partners. So they are the ones that bring professional actors to conduct sessions that help improve the use of voice, energy, presence, and movement. Participants also have the opportunity to network and meet senior leaders, pitch a business project in front of executive, and start reflecting on their personal development plan. The remote phase between the two residential modules include virtual learning, project work, coaching, and webinars. And I would like to take a moment to describe these elements that you can see in the bottom of this slide. So we curated 6 modules of content for virtual learning. A series of mandatory and optional courses and discussion groups are available online. In terms of connections, networking and peer-to-peer mentoring are constantly reinforced with several communication channels. Then we have the group business project, and this is a great opportunity to develop their business acumen, working a cross-cultural and cross-functional team, work on a topic that is not necessarily related to their day-to-day job, and also helps to gain some visibility, connect with the sponsors and stakeholders, and participants can practice new hard and soft skills as well as their own leadership style. So this is definitely one of the most challenging parts of the program. Therefore, these teams receive support from a strategic coach. Then for the executive coaching, participants allocate a few hours to discuss their personal development plan, objective, goals, and work with their coach in one-to-one sessions. The second on-site module is designed to practice all the new skills acquired and apply their business acumen. So they form teams to run a case study simulation game, just using one computer per team. So they really have to discuss and make decisions together. One of the key elements and learning points from this program is that when you create a safe space to experiment, the transformation is more impactful. So give and receive feedback pushes participants out of their comfort zone, but in a controlled environment. Encourage them to take more risk and learn. It really accelerates the learning. So this is what we call the experiential learning. Having professional actors to interact with these women gave them the opportunity to practice behaviors. And then with the business simulation, it was the same. Well, in this case, it wasn't about emotional safety, but as one of the participants said, it's like playing Monopoly. You are practicing how to make strategic decisions without making the company lose a lot of money. So you are willing to take this risk and learn from your mistakes. So during this residential module, we also include a guest speaker, the final presentation of their business project, and they start working on the personal sustainability plan to make sure they know how to continue this journey after the program is over. There's no official close of this journey. Even when they receive a certificate, we have awards, prizes, and surprises, but it's because the journey continues with all the tools and support provided, but now it's on them to use them. And one additional element that we think is crucial is the manager's support. Therefore, we include them in separate webinars and different touch points, some of them more formal than others. Development programs are not just for the participants taking the journey. These initiatives also reinforce the support the organization is given to talented or high potential leaders. And in this case, this particular company, shows the real commitment to achieve gender parity. Now, I want to share some results. So the initiative received an overall recommendation score from the participants of 9.1 out of 10. 30% of the participants were promoted to more senior roles, including reaching executive level. We saw personal and professional growth, better negotiation skills. I mean, these women were already amazing professionals, but you can see the transformation. I saw more confident, resilient, and authentic women ready to take the lead and go after more clear goals. They now have a more global vision of the business and an extended network of women leaders across the globe. I will say we had a happy ending, but it's not over. We're in the middle of the second cohort just to make sure this will be unstoppable, just nothing is going to stop this, and we won't have more excuses to not achieve gender parity. I think I'm going to stop here to give some time for questions. Thanks again for the time you devoted to this presentation, and go back to you, Alec.
All right, Diana, thank you so much. At this point, we do have some time for questions. So if you have a question, please do not hesitate to click submit on that Q&A button, which should appear on the right-hand side of your screen. All right, so we're going to jump into this one, and we have a first one here that I'm going to send to you, Diana. This comes from Nadia. Nadia's question is, what about support from other women? I've often found that women don't necessarily support each other, and they're trying to limit or secure their own place.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because with all these initiatives that are trying to get gender parity, there are going to be a lot of seats available for us, and it's more powerful if we all do this together. I've seen how women sometimes are, like men might be more neutral when they have to speak about the performance of someone else, but women, when they speak, they normally are more passionate about it. So if they say something good about another woman, that is much more impactful. So we need to support each other, and not just as, senior women supporting more junior women, but even peer-to-peer mentoring is very powerful, because you can actually express the way you feel, and you can, as a woman, you can understand exactly the situation, or more easily to understand the situation, that it's not always just about business, but also other elements that are involved. So I think it's one of the key elements, and that's why we always insist on this program, having a network of women leaders across the globe, helping each other in different countries, so it doesn't have to be the same promotion for all of them. There are going to be spaces. So I will advise every woman support each other, because that's how we're going to make it together. I don't know if Philippe or Sebastian have anything else to add?
No, I would concur. I think that's exactly why the types of programs you described are important, to have women network together and learn together and be inspired by each other, as well as by some of the faculty that we bring to these types of forums. And networking and attending events on this topic, I think, are powerful ways for women to develop each other and build that confidence and success we're talking about.
All right, great. We're going to move along here. We have more questions flowing through, so while I'm sorting through these, I'm going to go to this one here that we got from an attendee. And the question is, would it be better to create leadership initiatives for both men and women to help raise awareness of the issue?
Well, yeah, I think I'd like to jump on this one. If the focus is really to raise awareness of the issue, I think women have acute awareness of the issue because they experience the issue day in, day out. So in that case, I would say if the topic is raising awareness of the issue, it should be probably more men attending programs with some women educating them on their experience and challenges. Now, when the objective is to develop women and help them move up, I think having mostly women participants can be helpful. I think Diana talked to the fact that this provides a safe space for exchanging unique experiences, being inspired, building this peer network so that people can mentor each other. And also, in some cases, there could be target competency areas where needs are differentiated between men and women, so you can also differentiate the content. And I think a caveat as well, I think there are certainly, it's good to have forums where both genders are together in this developmental spirit. The risk at times, given the lack of parity in too many organizations still is that men will hijack the conversations and fall into the famously expressed man-explaining mode, which could be counterproductive. So, something, I think you have to be very explicit about what's the objective. Certainly, we saw the data about the lack of awareness. So I would say design programs with the men in mind to create, to close that gap on awareness and involve women to educate them. But there's a strong case for developing program for women to develop them.
Yeah, I just want to add that this program also works like an incubator for women executives. So this is a very specific program. As at Stratex, we have programs for leadership where we include women and men. But when the objectives are different, in this case is to achieve gender parity, I think that you need different objectives in different programs. And I will add that after this women leadership program, we also will have some training and maybe sessions with high-level executives that they need to also have this in mind to make sure that this is not going to be a problem or an obstacle on the top of the organization.
Awesome, great, thank you both. This next one is something that I think we can get the thoughts of each of you on separately. So we'll start with you on this one, Diana, but the question comes from Rebecca. The question is, what would you say is the biggest challenge for organizations making a culture change from a male-dominated workforce to a diverse workforce? And how do you think they can overcome these challenges?
Well, I think the main challenge is that some companies are already talking about it, but they are not taking that step that makes them create programs and actually advance on these initiatives. So I will say that normally this has to come from women, and that's why we included as one of the answers in the polls. That is women not asking for what they want, because we have this culture that we don't ask much because we're going to be perceived as, too aggressive or, we're pushing too much. And I think that we have to do the change in both sides. Women need to ask for more and ask all the time for what they need and what they want, because sometimes people don't know. Sometimes the leaders just don't realize and they don't have the idea of all the challenges that we're facing, but also it's a responsibility for the company to understand these challenges. And I'm saying this because when women are ready and they can take this leadership role, but they are not available for them, they might try to find another organization that is actually thinking about this, might be ready to give them the opportunity. So companies could be losing talented female leaders that can just want to find another option for them. So I think that it takes time, but has to come from both sides, from the women and for the organization. And as I said, and we talk about the role that men play on this, we need to think about this and we need to talk about it, because so Sheryl Sandberg also in her book, she shares that she was giving this conference, and then she got the part of the questions, and all the questions she got from women were about how to manage their career, and then men, they were asking about how to manage the business. And I wouldn't say that it's because women, they don't care about the business. It's because they have to do both things at the same time. They have to open this path, they have to open the opportunities for them to actually get a good career and also manage the business. So I think it's a very complex situation, but we have to work on this together and insist much more.
Yeah, great perspective. One element that I would contribute as well is the notion of if you don't measure it, you cannot manage it. So thinking about setting some goals as to, we talked about gender parity, the promotions, make sure it's fair, and measuring how you're doing quarter after quarter on these goals, having those discussions when you do the management reviews. Interestingly, a fun fact on France, I'm based in Boston here and Diana is in Paris, but interesting information about the top 40 public companies in France. At their board level, they have about 43% women. So how did that happen? Well, basically, back in 2011, there was legislation that came out mandating that we should reach 40% of women minimum in the boards of these public companies. And so now it happened, and France is leading the pack in Europe on that front, on that metric, and California is just following suit now, mandating the same. So, you know, as you said, either in that case that was mandated, but when you have these types of objectives, you can get to them. Obviously, it takes a lot of courage and leadership to set these types of goals, but then it works.
All right, great. Moving right along, we have time for one or two more. We're coming up close to the top of the hour, so we're going to take this one here. Apologize if I mispronounce your name. This comes from Concha. The question, and I'm going to start with you again, Diana. Do you foresee the current pursuit of greater diversity and inclusion generally to propel greater openness towards leaders who are women actually leading as women versus leading male traits?
I think that was a very complex question. I don't know if you can repeat or rephrase.
Sure. So essentially, it's do you foresee the current shift towards moving towards greater diversity and inclusion as a way for women to be able to lead as women, as opposed to women leading while imitating, male traits?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think that we are in a transition right now. It's true that women normally they have a different leadership style that is more inclusive, but also the culture is not, like trying to get more leaders like that, and that's why we need to redefine the characteristic of this leader, because otherwise you will see many women that when they are, with the only experience, the only women in the board, they will try to, behave more like men just because they need to be part of that group. And that's not sending the right message, because it's just another man with the name of that woman. And that's not what we want. When we talk about gender parity, is that we can have those seats, we can use our voice with our skills and personality. So I think that we're in a transition where if you don't do a little bit of, that traditional, and I'm going to say traditional just because it's what we've been seeing for years, leadership style that men have, might be more challenging to get there. And I saw this from actually one of the participants of this program. Now you have this big role, but you have to look stronger. You have to behave like you have to be more assertive. And that was a way just to tell her that she had to impose, and she had to be like more strong when she was expressing her opinions. And then the feedback that she got from other women and from other people from her team is that she was now, too aggressive and they didn't like it. So it's very difficult, but in this transition, we have to actually play both at the same time. Use our skills, but also try to fit in, because otherwise we won't have those seats.
Yeah, I think my 2 cents on that is, I think the leadership models, there are some stereotypes of, the male leader with being super decisive and high energy and so forth. And this is evolving. There's a lot of, I think, studies showing that that's not necessarily the most efficient style. We're more in a collaborative environment where even, in the days of the good to great research, some of the great companies really had leaders that were fairly subdued, not fitting that profile of the male, the hero, kind of leader, but having more empathy and, being people-oriented. And I would say, there's research also showing that women tend to be probably better at IQ and EQ combined than men. And I think the EQ dimension is also a very important one when it comes to working with your team and motivating your team. And so I think, yes, I think as more this topic is getting more visibility and is more talked about, I think the archetype of what is the desirable profile of a leader is evolving, and there's a demand for that, I think, from the millennials and the younger generations.
Awesome. Thank you both. That's actually going to be all the time we have for questions. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to nearly all of the questions, but we are coming up at the top of the hour. So thank you to everybody joining us today. Thank you for your participation in the polls and the Q&A session and for your attendance. Also want to thank you, Diana, and Philippe and Sebastian for joining us today and taking the time to share all of that information with us. And I want to thank StratX for sponsoring today's event. I've worked with StratX in the past on these webinars, and it's always a pleasure. So thank you to StratX for your support today. Again, if you enjoyed today's presentation, you're going to be redirected to a really quick post-event survey. If you have the time and you'd like to fill it out, please feel free. Your feedback is always very important to us, and it does help us improve our future events. So thank you for that. So thanks again to everybody on the line. Thanks to Diana, Philippe, and Sebastian, and the folks over at StratX. We'll see everybody next time for our next CLO webinar, which will be taking place Tuesday, April 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and that is titled Creating a Coaching Culture. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye.